Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to this session on direct routing, Teams, policy recording made easy. My name is Ben Merrills and I'm the CEO of a company called Zapappi. So I've worked in telecoms since about 2001. I've worked for a number of ISPs, data center providers and telecoms companies over that time. But at heart, I'm a .NET developer, so everything that we've done over the years has all been sort of a .NET shop, and I'm really sort of passionate and interested in technology. We started Zapappi in 2013 with a focus on SIP, but now we also have a number of direct routing as a service products as well as international numbering, and we're really big into automation. So that's one of the things we're going to be covering primarily in this talk. We're also really proud to be a gold sponsor of Comsverse. So if you're here, you're probably doing things already or looking at direct routing, maybe policy-based call recording. And when we looked at direct routing, sort of nearly 2 years ago, one of the biggest issues that we saw with it as a product over things like the Microsoft calling plans was the roadblocks in adoption. And one of those primary roadblocks was the manual PowerShell processes that were going to have to be done by Teams admins or those who had, a Windows laptop with the Skype for Business PowerShell module installed and the correct access and the correct knowledge. And so we realized pretty quickly one of the things we were going to need to do was to automate the PowerShell components of direct routing. So we set out on a project to create a provisioning portal for direct routing. And that provisioning portal basically included a set of components that would allow us to get the user to log in with their Microsoft credentials, take that information, take all the configuration information about direct routing and their tenant, and automate the PowerShell parts of the provisioning process. So that means getting an OAuth login token for the user. We don't take their username and password off them. We wanted to then be able to pass that in a reliable way to automate the PowerShell parts of the provisioning process. And we've also now done the same with policy call recording as well. So we combined those two elements into one solution that we have within our product set. And I'll go through a demo in a few minutes and just show you how that works. And if obviously at the end of it, you've got any questions about the implementation, I'm happy to answer them. So yeah, we'll skip on to that now. Can we switch the, do I? Oh, I have first problem. There we go, excellent. Okay, so we built a provisioning process for direct routing, and obviously we want to make that really easy for the customer experience. So this is a rebrandable portal that the customer can log into. You can give this to your end user. It can be branded as any business, and it basically takes them through all the components required to set up call recording, to set up direct routing and call recording if you want to in one provisioning process. So the first thing we need to take from them, obviously, is some information about the tenant that they're using. So in this case, I'm going to use, and what we can do is then we can test that domain basically is set up correctly for direct routing. So that includes whether the DNS is configured, all the bits that we would need to use link discover to connect into their tenant. If that's all met, then we can jump on to the next step, where we're basically taking some information about what kind of numbers they want within their tenant. So I'm going to just give this a name. And then we can choose one of three acquisition methods for numbers. New numbers, numbers from a Microsoft calling plan, or numbers from another carrier. So we're just going to select new numbers in this example. And then we're going to select a calling plan that you can create. So as I said, technically we're a wholesale SIP company. We want to give our customers a unique way to deliver direct routing and compliance call recording to them. So you can create your own calling plans and you can add on recording elements to those calling plans if you want to. So I'm just going to select a calling plan with 200 minutes of UK and call recording baked in. So We've also automated all of the audio codes provisioning side of our direct routing platform. So we use audio codes, we use them in high availability dual pairs. And when we configure a new tenant, we automatically assign it a fully qualified domain name. So I'm just going to accept the T's and C's. Now, these would be our customers' terms and conditions. They're not ours. As I said, this is a brandable portal, so nothing directly relates back to us. So at this point, we're actually going away and talking to the audio code server and provisioning all of the direct routing tenant within it. So the only thing we need to do now is provide the verification code back from Microsoft, which we then add to the DNS for the domain, and click verify. And that's that part of the setup complete. So we do know that not every customer and not every end user business wants to allow someone else to touch their Microsoft environment. They don't want some code being run on their behalf that they don't know what it is or what it's doing. So we do offer two different methods of provisioning. One is automatic and one is manual. But we're just going to go with the automatic one. The reason for that is we actually audit out everything that's done. So who's run it, what PowerShell code was run, what the responses were back. But the other really good thing is we can run some diagnostics information on their behalf. So for example, before we do a job, we might run something like get CS tenant to bring back information. And then we can say, actually, looking at it from a diagnostics point of view, not everything in your tenant is correctly configured or set up. So we're a UK-based carrier. So we offer telephone numbers as part of the service. We offer complete coverage for the UK, also another 180 countries around the world, 47 of those with emergency services. I'm just going to go for a local, and we're based in the Midlands, so I'm going to go for a Derby telephone number. And I'm going to go for 10, and click next. And obviously, you're going to want to associate telephone numbers with an address for emergency services, but also potentially for exports in the future. They need to be verified against the postcode. Once we're happy with all of that, we can just go ahead, confirm it, and we provision telephone numbers in real time. So on the next part of this process, we're actually going to be able to go and associate users and telephone numbers in one go. So I've got my telephone numbers. And because we selected a calling plan with call recording, we can go ahead and select a default retention period. So this is a call compliance bot or policy-based call recording. It's our own bot that we've created, and it's built into this process. So the bot and the policy for it are all provisioned as part of this process, as well as the authentication for the bot to be able to go in and look at calls. So one of the things we've done is at this point, obviously you could just start typing in usernames for users. But if you want to, we can go ahead and we can log into Microsoft. Now I've got two-factor authentication turned on, so I'm going to need my phone out. So basically at this point, we're just consenting to all the permissions that we need to do the direct routing provisioning. Are we going to get to, oh no, okay, it's deemed that I don't need to. Right, lovely. So now when I click on the users box, we've gone to the graph. We've brought back all the users that are within the tenant, and we've also brought back the associated SKUs with those users. Now we have a table on our end which basically looks at those SKUs and looks to see which of those licenses can be associated with direct routing. If one of those licenses is associated with direct routing, we'll display it next to the customer's name. If it's not, we'll still allow you to try and provision direct routing. Maybe we've made a mistake, but we think that the licenses that are available there are the only ones that really are going to matter. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a user. I can then go and associate one of those phone numbers that I got in the previous step, and I can also associate it with the calling plan that I chose right at the beginning, and I can click add. Now I can add multiple here, or we also have a bulk import process where you can export all those telephone numbers and then import them in one job lot. As you click next, because I'm already logged in, we don't need to log in again, but it's going to confirm to me which tenant this provisioning job is going to be worked against and how long we have left on the access token. So I'm just going to click begin provision, and this kicks off 3 jobs. So the first job is going away and configuring direct routing. So we use the carrier trunk methodology in Microsoft. That means there's not a PSTN online gateway in the customer's tenant. That sits in our tenant, and we just add a voice route policy to them. We then go and create the call recording policy and attach an application to it. So there's a policy there to be associated with the users. And then the third step is we go and associate the users with their on-prem phone number, the calling policy that we'd have created as part of the new gateway job. And if they've been configured for call recording, we'll also grant them the call recording policy. Now, the last step in the process is the bot. It works on a different set of permissions that we used when we logged in to Microsoft. So we're just going to go and authenticate the bot. And we should go through again. So slightly different set of permissions here. It's going to ask us if the bot can join calls and read media streams, also be able to read users' profiles. And we do that so we can display things like their name along with their UPN information within the portal. So once that's been consented, that is it. We have basically now configured direct routing in the tenant, associated the user with direct routing and that telephone number, and configured compliance call recording. And from this point on, any calls they make either over direct routing or inside Microsoft Teams are now being picked up by that bot. Once it is done, obviously users can then self-manage as well. So you don't have to be involved with, day-to-day provisioning or day-to-day management of the tenant. It can be done by anyone within the business who has the correct credentials. So basically a Teams administrator. If they log into this interface and make a change, those changes can then be synced up to Microsoft. And again, all that's auditable and we keep all the information about it. So really, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of how it works. You might have some questions about how we've done it. I'm happy to have those questions. So yeah, would anybody like to know anything more? Don't all raise your hands at once. If anyone's curious, the way we do the jobs is we actually use Azure Functions. So when we kick off each individual job, we actually add a message to a service bus queue inside Azure. And then that queue is fed into Azure Functions, which then execute the PowerShell and pass through back a JSON response. What it does mean is that we can be sort of, if you like, cloud scalable with provisioning, as long as we can push jobs into a queue and as long as there's an Azure function endpoint somewhere that will accept it, in theory, you've got complete horizontal scaling. We try to split some jobs into parts. So if someone configures more than 100 users, for example, we'll split it off into a number of user jobs. As far as the user interface is concerned, they just see that it's running the user jobs, but we try to break it down into blocks of 100. So there's a couple of different ways you can handle that. By default here, we just go with full compliance. But the policy can be reconfigured. So there's a number of options you can set on a call recording policy. They include whether the bot has to be there at the beginning of the call, whether the bot has to be there throughout the whole call, and the same for meetings. They're for some reason split out into two. If the bot weren't available and the highest level of compliance is set, then yes, you can't make calls or receive calls. And I think the reasoning behind that is, of course, if it is there for compliance purposes, then if you're able to make a call and it can't be recorded for whatever reason, then you're not compliant. Any other questions? Disappointing. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Anyway, I hope it gave you a bit of an idea of what we do and what we've created. And if you do want to find out more, come and have a chat with us on our stand. Happily talk to you. We have other products apart from direct routing, but this is one that we're particularly proud in. Cheers. Thank you very much, everybody.